You're live.
Thank you. And we are back from a longer than expected break. It is 1:15 p.m. We were on break just because there was a suspicious package that was found. It is all clear now, but I want to take this time and thank our Thurston County Sheriff, corrections staff, as well as our court security. We also worked hand in hand with Olympia Police Department and State Patrol. Thank you for getting us through this process, and thank you for all you do. With that, we will jump back into budget. So, Robin, handing it back to you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Just going to leap right back in. The schedule is slightly changed for the rest of the day today. We had been planning to meet with Judge Buckley and others from District Court at 1. That has been moved to 3:30. So we are just going to move along in our review until 2:30 when Public Defense comes to chat with you. So, straight back to the policy page. We were having a robust discussion about the budget needs in public health and the funding that is coming from the state for foundational public health. And Romero and I will work with Kurt, and we'll come back to you at the end of October with more information, an org chart, and a kind of a plan, if you will, and some options for the board to talk about that funding. So I'm going to very quickly go down the list of positions that are proposed to be paid for with foundational public health funding. And I think we were on line
63.
Thank you, 63. Yep, that's what I had too. So 63 is the $309,000 for the removal of position end dates for positions in environmental health. 64 is environmental health business application analyst. This is the position, that Kurt was talking about yesterday, to stand up the new permit system, the public health side of the permit system, and then maintain it into the future.
I have a question on 63.
Yep.
So what I was concerned about in reading the note was that they've got these grant continuity, but then it basically says, well, this runs for 2 years, but then we've got foundational public health available. And I want to make sure, and this is environmental health, and we allocated previously all of our environmental health money to the septic. So we don't know what these positions are. So I want to make sure that we're not relying on that money that we've allocated for pollution identification control to support whatever this is, because I'm not going to be supportive of reducing that in any way.
Okay.
So there needs to be a connection there for me to understand whether or not that's what puts that in. Does saying that foundational public health might be able to support this in the future, is that putting it jeopardy? Would that be at the expense of the 4.5 FTEs we supported for
That you've already funded. Right, so when we come back, we'll be able to show the difference between what is already funded and what is assumed to be additional spending in the future.
And then on these boxes, can we just not check them right now because we need more information, or do you want us to
That's fine.
Okay.
That is just fine if we want to skip these for now. I mean, all right, and they're not general fund, so it's a little easier. We're going to target general fund. So 64, the business application analyst. 65 is disease control and prevention. This is an accounting assistant to assist in that area of public health for $102,000 a year. Line 66 is a community health nurse 2. This is child death review and injury and violence prevention position.
Who's that position under? I thought
This would be under Gretchen Thaler, I'm sure.
I thought it was, just when I read it, I thought it was an interesting position. I was like wondering where that.
It does look interesting. This person would work with the coroner's office and focus on childhood death, I'm sure. So more to come on that.
I mean, it seems, we've seen the rates of child abuse go up, so I think there's definitely a correlation there and.
Yep. Line 67 is a position, also a community health nurse 2. That's what CHN11 stands for. And this one would be working to improve access to healthcare resources. Line 68 is a position for a education and outreach specialist for the area of maternal child health, so in public health. And again, we are assuming that all of these positions would be paid with the increased funding from the state for foundational public health. Moving to page 9, we're gonna shift, the line 69 is out of treatment sales tax, which is administered in public health. And this would be backfill money, if you will, for the BHASO, that is the Thurston Mason Behavioral Health Administrative Services Organization. And the BHASO has been receiving grant funding from the True Blood settlement for a few years now. They had anticipated that funding would go on longer, but have been notified that it will end as of September 30 of this year. The ASO thinks that they have enough funding to get them through the rest of this year, providing treatment services to our jail inmates. And what this request is to continue the services into the future using treatment sales tax money. So
But a little bit of a lesser level to what the
a
true
slightly less
broad plan
lever,
is
yep,
funding.
fewer FTEs.
It makes mention here that those that are maybe not well enough to stand trial, I guess, and we're not gonna try and augment sending those folks out to like Western State for review or something, are we? Are we gonna try and do that in-house? Are we gonna make any changes from what we were doing under True Blood, other than maybe cutting back a little tiny
It's
bit?
my understanding that this would continue the services currently provided with True Blood funding, only at a lower level of service. So less than they currently have. And I don't believe that today we are substituting the ability to send our inmates who need that type of assistance to Western State, but I will say that it is extremely difficult to get them in.
Oh, yeah.
And as you may recall, there was very specific activities under the True Blood grant as a result of the many conversations we've had with Disabilities Rights of Washington.
True Blood, as I understand, the program was about the gap between the time that it takes them to get to Western State. So it's trying to get them out of jail, it's trying to give them enough support that we can take them out into the community, find them housing and services, because it was taking 6, 9, 12 months to get to Western State. So it was clogging up the jail, and it was unfair to the people that were in there. And this was a way to try to mitigate that backlog at Western
That was
State.
exactly the findings of Disabilities Rights of Washington when they audited the jail. You have
I guess my concern on the whole thing is that King County's got a pretty serious case up there. And the court has ordered, I almost think it's the county to pay $250 a day because they couldn't get them in for an evaluation or something. And I'm trying to stay ahead of that problem.
Well,
I think it's the state is.
Is the state
is
the one?
the one who's
Well,
to
I mean,
pay
that doesn't bother me quite so much. If the state's responsible, I can, but
It's not the first
Okay.
time that the
So
state's
this-
been fined.
this match, Judge Buckley spoke with me about how Western State currently has a 3 to 4 month wait. And so they're having to release these people because they can't sit in the jail and so you were at the JRT meeting, he said, when this was, I wasn't at that one. And so he said it was a violation of the True Blood agreement with the state that the state created. And so I was just wondering, Commissioner Menser, if you remember that conversation, and does this match with kind of what's going on? I'm sorry to put you on the spot, like,
Yeah, I'm
for
not,
something that happened like probably a month ago.
I don't remember
Do you remember
exact
that? Maria?
conversation.
Well, Judge Buckley's coming at 3:30, so
Yeah.
we can ask him at that time.
Certainly ask him about that.
But that was an issue he said they were having right now just because of that 2 to 4 month wait with Western State House.
I'd be a little aggravated about, I mean, if this is something that's flowing from a lawsuit and the state was funding it and now somehow they're not funding it and now we're having to use local funds that, I'd be aggravated about this a little more if we didn't have the treatment sales tax presentation yesterday and see that we have, capacity. I mean, I think these are valuable services to have.
Yes.
This isn't our fault. So it's aggravating to have to use our own resources to fix someone else's problem, but ultimately it's probably a good use of the money that we have.
And when we received the True Blood grant, we knew that we would be coming to this point.
Right.
Because it was no way that we can back away from this.
But there was probably the vision that they would have their Western State Hospital problem fixed by then. And of course, now they're gonna, spend $800 million on, who knows how many years that'll take to actually get that going, so. It's a gap, that's what it basically amounts to.
All right, so next item is line 70, also from Public Health. There is no fund in the fund box, but I believe it's coming out of Fund 1500 or 1400?
1,400
1400, thank you.
housing.
So
which is what again?
Housing.
housing, Fund 1500, not general fund. And this would be paid for with the administrative funding that goes with the all of the various funding streams that we are bringing in at this time for housing. And you may recall when you met with Kurt a week or so ago, and then yesterday we looked at the housing fund. The amount of revenue coming in housing is on an upward trend, even if you factor out all of the one-time money that we've received for emergency assistance. So this would remove the end dates for 2 fiscal staff, 2, right? There's no money shown in any of these boxes because the end date is currently 2023, December of 23. And they are asking you to please remove the end dates now so they can help to recruit. We're having a terrible time recruiting financial staff. It's one of the professions that has become difficult to fill positions. So they are asking to remove the end dates now. Line 70 is from the Veterans Fund. This is the pilot program that you heard just a little bit about yesterday.
Food security?
Yep, to address food insecurity with veterans. And then the program does not only address food insecurity, but it is also a bridge to engage veterans and get them into other services that they need. So more coming on that. You've asked for a work session on that topic. And then the last item, line 72, is also, which fund is this? Is this housing?
Housing.
1400. So this also removes the end date for a housing social services position who will help to manage the program. So those are the whole policies.
And that funding source to that funding number is pass-through money from Commerce, from the state?
It is, again, multitude of sources for the housing program. So you've got, what are all the bill numbers,
So
20?
you have the recording fees, you have the
Yeah.
home fund comes from the federal government, you have the CDBG funding, and you also have the home fund. And the home fund accumulated, correlation with the city of Olympia just brings an additional $6.5 million to that. And within all those funds, there is a need to provide administrative support. And administrative support is not just managing those grants and the permits with them, but also providing support to the Regional Housing Council. And as you know, the Regional Housing Council is the one who's going to be providing.
At some point, will we be getting a briefing, so to speak, on how many FTEs would be associated with that fund and how healthy it would be?
I will be working with Tom is to actually have a briefing to the board related to the actual the structure, proposed structure of the Regional Housing Council, which includes the FTEs.
I mean, but we're not just giving a blank check, that's what I'm wondering about.
No, you're not.
No. There's an absolute need in there.
Who's in this position, or, I mean, like, we're adding one, how many do we have now? In this housing, social services one?
So we,
Jacinda, is that,
Jacinda. and
is
then
she that
Yeah,
position?
the Keely and Tom, those are the housing people.
What is Elisa's department? Is she not?
I think she's administrative support.
Administrative support. I know when the whole,
So don't quote me on that, her position.
okay. Only reason, she, when everything was going on with CAC, she was the point of contact, for a lot
She
of,
led the Thurston Thrives rental assistance or whatever, like the landlord-oriented action team.
Yeah, and she was the focal point of the hand.
So she does have housing responsibilities.
Education and outreach specialist.
Yeah, there we go.
thank you.
Okay, so that's it for the policy.
So that's it.
That's $7 million worth or whatever
So
you
that
said.
is $5.3 million of policy level requests in '23, an additional $706,000 in '22, and then all the other funds that are affected are at the bottom of this
Which we
page.
can fund $1 million or something.
Well, we're trying to figure out ways to create additional capacity, but if we had no other avenue, then yeah, you could buy about $1 million of this, which is
Well, we'll
the
bring
value
it,
number.
we're
But
refining the
we're
numbers.
working on strategies to build capacity.
And based on.
Get out our balancing act.
Yeah, do the
Well, that's,
simulation.
I mean, it's just part of the process of building a budget, it's trying to be innovative within the means that we have. And we're just narrowing down on the numbers, on the potential additional revenue that may be coming from the ARPA funds, as Robin stated on Monday. That is gonna create additional capacity to the board for the board to consider a one-time. And I think and those requests may be opportunities for you to consider one-time.
And when you say one time, out of which funds would that be?
So, one time,
Or to take care of which FTEs or?
no, the FTEs will not be at one time,
No, I know, they go on forever.
correct? But there are other,
Like Josh's issue, is that,
that's one time.
okay,
The potential bonus for employees, that's one time.
Okay.
The contributions to the risk fund,
one time.
one time.
That's-
So,
But not really.
Kind of.
kind of, but
Part of it is one
but
time.
the initial investment to the fund is
And
one
then
time. You know,
ongoing more money.
Right, so, tomorrow I will have the forecast model, the interactive model, and I'll be ready to plug things in so you can see what the picture looks like depending on what kind of scenarios we'd like to look at. So items that I can cover with one-time funding from freed up money due to ARPA, we can key that in. And it will still have the ongoing
Those are some
impact
one-time.
for like the risk money built in. So we'll be ready tomorrow to look at the interactive model. You'll also be able to look at different levels of COLA, we can talk about how much of a bonus you might wanna consider, all those things. I'll be ready to go tomorrow, not today. All right.
I got the printout from May showing how awesome it looked.
It did, it looked so nice in May. We were in such good condition in May. Yeah, I miss May. All the things that come up, but fortunately, with every challenge we face, we seem to also have opportunities, so we'll make it work. I'm gonna turn it over now to Nicole, who is going to take you back to the worksheet, and I don't know where my copy is that I could show you, but yep,
I have my notes on that.
thank you. I'll hand it back to you. But you may recall this worksheet that you looked at in early September. And there's a copy available today if you wanna look at it. That has every office and department in the general fund back to 2007 and how much they reverted each year. So this is part of the can they afford to absorb something conversation. And thank you, Nicole. The question that you asked was, what made up the reversion? Was it all vacancy savings? So Nicole's done some work and she is prepared to answer for any given office or department. Was the bulk of their reversion over the years from vacancy savings, or were there other things that caused the reversion? And I think, not to steal your thunder, but I think the bottom line is that the bulk of the savings were indeed from vacancies.
Yes. Robin is correct.
Turn it over to
The
you.
majority, when you look across the board at all the departments, the savings is vacancy savings, because we load the full salary of our FTE, so a lot of the bulk is in vacancy. Because of what's going on in COVID over the past couple of years, you've seen that number increase. So if you were to look at the budget to actuals sheet before you, you'll see that that number is increasing in the amount of reversion, and it has a lot to do with the vacancy savings. What you'll see in a lot of the departments is that in their supplies and services, they may have went over in that category, but they were able to do that because they have a lot of savings in their personnel and benefits. So if you have a specific department you would like me to tell you information about, I could definitely dig down and let you know now.
Right. I would also say that one of the things that we see is very clearly,
Can I add something?
yes,
And this is about the community planning and economic development.
no, this is all of your offices
All
and
offices.
departments.
That hit the general fund.
No, I'm.
Oh, you're looking
Oh,
at
you're
the
asking a
CPI.
question.
Yeah.
Oh, you're gonna ask a question about
About that
CPAC?
one,
No, you
yeah.
can't.
No, it's about everything.
Yeah, go ahead.
Right, yesterday we were talking about the shortage, but I'm seeing here a reversion of 1 million, and I'm wondering if I'm even looking at the right sheet, because
You are correct, but yesterday I believe the conversation was about the land use and permit fund, and this is just strictly general fund. So they are having an issue in the permit fund, but that's 4124, however, in general
So why can't
fund.
we use from that reversion, why can't that,
Plug that hole.
So a
Plug
lot
that
of that
hole.
reversion was, talk about the reversions
There
out
were
of
a lot of
CPAC.
empty planner positions.
Yeah, it's the planners, and we're looking at the
Planners.
planning department, not department.
but they need that to get over this year specifically, like that, you know, I know they still need $1 million for next year, probably, possibly.
Right.
But this year we were talking about the 700 to plug the hole, and if they're reverting back $1 million, why can't that just be used?
Just remember the
So-
reversion that you see here goes back to the ending fund balance.
I understand that, but
So
if we were-
cumulative.
I
Right,
don't understand.
but we gotta fill the
We've got a
gap.
huge
So-
fund balance.
No,
We
but
do have
all
a
this
huge-
feeds into the ending fund balance, all the reversions.
Well, it'll just
should
be less
opposites.
huge, it'll be less.
Yeah, less huge.
But it'll be,
Right.
it'll be covered.
It's gonna be less huge, that's right, it is huge right now. And what we've already programmed in assumes that we are gonna pay that 706,000.
Right, so it's vacancy savings,
But
it's
yeah,
all of, yeah.
it's,
vacancy
so
savings.
in Department 36, I thought that a lot of that was because they didn't do their professional services.
So in the planning department, so here, I believe he was asking about 27. So community planning like CPED, that is vacancy, but planning would be 36. And so that amount of reversion is not as high, it's not in the millions, it's around 300,000, and that still is vacancy savings as well.
27's gonna turn back $1 million this year?
That's what they have, yes.
So that's what I'm
Wow.
wondering, like,
Oh, wait a minute.
So here's what, so let's take a moment and think about what does general fund pay for in CPED? Code compliance?
Long-range planning, right?
Well, long-range planning is Department 36, so that's separate, and that's what Nicole was saying. They're not in the $1 million range. They're turning back money too, but the funding in general fund for CPED is to pay for code compliance and for those services provided at the front counter that cannot be paid with permit funding. And part of what I know it's not very clear, but part of what you may have heard us talking about yesterday, and that my team's been talking about with Josh, is, are they appropriately using the funding that the board has provided for services that cannot be paid for with permit money? And that's one of the things that Summer needs to really scrub, because it's very possible that some of the costs that are currently hitting Fund 4124 should be being billed against the general fund money. So that's one of the things we're trying to work out.
Doesn't it, just to make, I want to ask a question about Commissioner Mejia's question. So doesn't it, though, ultimately not matter? I mean, if they revert $1 million and then we just shoot them back 700,000 just to fill their.
They're gonna do $1.5 million.
It's the same difference than making them shift it over themselves. Like, it doesn't really.
It has the same,
Well,
it has the same effect though.
It's the same
For this
effect.
year,
This year has the same effect because Robin already has the $708,000 on that sheet. So as a result, the ending fund balance is less than,
right,
so it has the same.
Same thing, but your
But-
question might be, then what about in a future year? If they're gonna keep reverting $1 million out of there, then.
why would we
Then
do
they.
that? But I'm wondering if, when I hear that they're reverting that much this year, that makes me wonder if they have properly allocated their costs. And they may be able to fix the problem themselves
Well, I think it's
if they're
vacancy.
properly allocating the cost.
It's vacancy is why they've got that.
It's vacancies in the code compliance,
Well,
that
everything,
may be,
between the two, planning and, between the two, it's $1.5 million.
I think they got a cost allocation issue.
Well,
I think there's a combination.
but regardless, I don't think there's any legality requirement that we not pay out of general fund on any of those
No, no.
positions you talked about.
So I think that the plan, and you're absolutely right, Commissioner Menzer, it doesn't matter if we take it from the reversion from CPED or if we take it from the reversion from the Commissioner's office. That we'll take part of the fund balance, ending fund balance this year, and plug the $700,000 hole. And we'll do that with general fund money, we have to. And then you remember in their financial plan next year, they're predicting that they're gonna be short by $2 million. And I said, transfer $1 million now. The reason I didn't say just put the 2 million in is because we need to do this scrub, and I don't think they're allocating costs appropriately. I think the problem is a combination of things. They need to clean up their accounting. And by the way, that's another area that is deficient in financial staff, but that's a different conversation.
But they just
They
just hired someone, right?
They have just hired a new someone, and she is coming up to speed, and she's doing really
But she's a
well.
replacement
She
for somebody
is a replacement for
that, what, changed
someone
under the
that
gun or something?
did not do so
Yeah,
well and is not, I don't wanna lay blame.
And we're seeing the consequence of that.
Yes, yes. So, it's a combination problem of, are they allocating things appropriately, and they overestimated their revenue.
But they're gonna
grossly
fix it,
overestimated.
they're gonna fix it on the end, Commissioner Mejia figured it out, we're ready. Let's do You got it,
So it's,
you're there.
I am surprised that they're gonna revert that much, and we gotta look at that.
Okay. Yeah, so the year before, they reverted 851,000, but then in 2020, it was around 500,000, so it has grown. So I'd have to look into that and see.
But yeah, the budget also
Yeah, it was
increased.
never that high.
But it's all about vacancies.
Yeah, they've been teetering around the 400,000 in reversion.
No, that's not reversion. This amount right here is the reversion, 78.
Oh, yeah, look at that, I'm sorry.
Yeah, see, it went up
Was 200 to
drastically.
1,000,006.
Yeah, because in 2020, they reverted $32,000.
Yeah.
And then in 2021, they reverted $236,000.
But
And
their
now
budget
they're-
went up twice.
Their budget went up
So,
because
and-
they have direct
Yeah,
appropriation.
so that's what, from 2000 and,
Are you
That's a
looking
great
at
point.
planning department or which line?
You guys want one of these bigger sheets?
It's the big sheet with the tiny print.
it's the same as from 2021 to 2022.
The numbers aren't
went up for
ordered,
an
so I
additional
don't know.
$1 million.
It's in the first page.
So, and that's
It's
the
in alphabetical
reflection
order,
of the reversion
go
as
by,
well.
It's
yeah, it's right under commissioners.
3, 4, 5,
You gotta flip back and forth if you're gonna look at planning
Yeah.
and
Yeah, because
CPID.
Yeah.
just with this reversion rate,
So you wonder why we're funding them at that level. We need to do the scrub because my suspicion is that they're not allocating costs correctly. And that will help alleviate the problem in 4124. That and then all of Josh's strategies to bring the,
Fund balance.
the fund balance up. So that's CPED.
so
So you were asking for just general questions. I mean, I know, Robin, when you asked for this sort of analysis or you suggested it, you were thinking that maybe there might be a department that was over budgeted because of programmatic issues, not necessarily purely vacancy savings. And it didn't, none of the groups showed that, evidence of that?
That is
That is correct.
true.
Not a single
It's
group.
almost every bit of it is
Only
vacancy
savings.
savings.
So I have a question though, because I'm seeing from juvenile court, they've been returning around 500,000, and this isn't just pandemic, this is pre-pandemic
Every
numbers.
year. Yes.
So what's going on with their budget that they're returning $500,000?
Juvenile court has Yep, go ahead, Nicole.
And I know and I'm wondering if it has to do with kind of how many people they have currently in the system, which right now I think they only have 6
Well, that's incarcerated,
incarcerated, so,
but there's still a lot of kids in the system being dealt with.
yeah, so does that have to do like something with it? Because we're seeing this 500,000 reversion rate on a yearly basis. The only time it kind of went down was in 2018, or it went down to 351, but then after that,
Right back up.
right back up to 500.
So you're bringing a great point in here. So it is compounded. So first it is vacancy savings, but other than that, it's also in their services. So it looks as though they have a lot of reversion in their service line. I'm going to go off a limb here. Does this have anything to do with Blake? Is Blake in juvenile court?
No,
No,
No.
so then it's their services and how they're spending their budget in that line, okay?
All the services related to,
The kids, probation and programs and
yeah,
riding a
Not
horse,
not a lot of kids do.
self-esteem.
But Commissioner Mejia is saying, if I understand, if they had 500,000 less dollars, they would be delivering the same services, because that's been a
Because they're
consistent
reverting that
reversion
much
number.
every year.
Sure.
So there'd be no diminution in service.
That is the
Probably.
theory, yes.
Yeah, so in 21, they reverted 200, about
Everybody likes to
200,000
have a safety
services.
net, a savings account.
Well, it doesn't
It's
have
just
to be the
human
full
nature.
500,
We all
but
try.
I mean, they're returning that same amount like year after
Year
year.
after
Oh,
year
yeah,
after
yeah,
after
no,
year.
good
And that's
point.
that's the pattern that I
Yeah,
was
and the
thinking I'd see.
treasurer is begging us for like, $5,000 cushion for
Yeah.
his operation,
Yeah.
he's got $500,000 sitting out there
Yeah.
not being used.
Right, and this is
Robin's
the
point.
trick about reversions, you're sitting on money that you're just gonna turn back in. Having a little cushion is good, but anything over like 3%, when you're reverting more than 3 to 5%, anything over 5%, you're just tying up money needlessly.
Yeah, we're missing out on opportunities when we tie up that much money.
Exactly,
They're not
That's
gonna
what I'm
use it on
saying.
the service, and then it should be put to a better use.
It's a sheriff deputy,
that's
Well,
exactly
for
right.
example.
Well, yeah, you can see the trends though, because like, for the prosecuting attorney's office, it's been pretty consistent, and then you see kind of in 2020, it went up, and it's like, okay, salary savings, right? That's why they're reverting,
Right.
their reversion went up higher. But in just that one, it's consistent even before the pandemic.
That's right.
That's correct.
Yeah, you don't wanna necessarily look at the pandemic years, because those are gonna be weird, no matter what fund you're looking at. So I would also say though, that a lot of our offices and departments have pretty consistent vacancy savings. And in Thurston County, we fully fund FTEs, and I wouldn't do it any other way. I would not suggest that we not have fully funded FTEs. However, I know that in other counties in Washington State, there is some type of an adjustment to a budget for vacancy savings. So there's a presumption. Now, we get there when I do the forecast. And I forecast a minimum of 3% reversion, because we know that every office and department, overall, we're gonna get 3% back,
Except for this-
year after year,
Can I ask
Except the
or
assessor.
more.
The assessor.
Well, the
He's pretty
assessor,
tight, isn't he?
the assessor this year is projecting to turn in quite a bit of money.
Oh, is he?
So,
in 1 year he left $1.
right, so there are some counties, we
True story.
budget, and I'm not suggesting to make this change this year, but it's food for thought as we go into next biennium. We budget at the fund department level. Some counties go one level below that, and they appropriate personnel costs and everything else. And any savings in personnel costs revert to the fund. In
A
this case,
rollover?
the general fund.
Are you saying, oh, go
No,
back?
they don't roll over, they revert to the
Don't roll
general
over.
fund.
So you end up with
They
about-
can't be used,
80% of your money is, you're in that category.
yep. And they can't, the offices and departments can't use their vacancy savings to pay for
For other stuff.
other stuff.
In my experience, that has been the case where I've been in the past, that the personnel costs are at your discretion, they can't be used to supplement services and supplies without direction to do so. And when I'm looking through the lines, I can see that they're overspending in their supplies and services because they have a lot of vacancy savings.
But they're probably underfunded in some of those areas.
That is, we'd have to true that up.
In
And-
some instances.
Yeah,
In some
some
instances,
instances.
The last time the juvenile court was reverted less than $350,000 was 2010.
Yep.
So if, let's say the Board of County Commissioners reduced that budget by $250,000, there would be no effect on juvenile court.
You would want to have a conversation with the judges, but that is my proposition, that yes, you can do that without.
Well, they'd still have a fund of 250 left to
Yeah,
turn
just
in.
as the safety net,
It'd be
right?
their safety net.
Right.
That would cover their vacancies.
And that would be,
Right.
that would be $250,000 of ongoing, non-one-time funding that we could use to try to meet the
Other
other
needs.
needs of the county.
So that will be some of the decisions they need to make at the end of the month. Because you can ask any office in the department, based on your perspective, to ask them, we're gonna be reducing your budget by this much, tell us where.
No.
And that's what it's gonna be.
Right. And when you did that, you
Tell us
may
why not.
recall, at least two of you
Tell
will
us why
recall,
not.
that when we did that very thing in 2020, when the pandemic hit, every office and department said, there's
We won't
nowhere to
cover
cut but staff.
Well, we're not doing it for, I mean, this, I understand, right, but this one, it's a clear trend that's been outlaid for years. It's not anything that, happened in 2020. It's been even before that, and that's why it popped up to me, because it's been pretty consistent
is
amount of
consistent.
reversion. But I wanted to ask about, Superior Court, and it probably has to do with staffing, but their reversion rate went up the 500, and I was wondering, is it salary savings? Is it something having to do with Blake?
So Superior Court,
It's on page 3, and it's number 6.
that's in their services budget. They have about 300 to 400,000 in services
That they're not
that
spending.
they're not
So
spending.
it's just salary savings?
No,
No,
that's services, not salary.
Services, supplies and
Programs they
services.
have, and they have not been able to spend all
And,
the money on
and,
programs.
and you're looking in years after 2018?
So I have it in extra help. So it looks like their extra help line, over the past 2 years, though, it's been about $100,000, so that might be due to the pandemic. And then in supplies, however, is where you're getting that consistency of about 100,000 over the years. And then substantially high in the last year.
Yeah, okay.
So that's another area where you could have a chat with the administering judge, presiding judge, and, yep.
They could dig down and see where it is and what programs that the services are really not being spent.
Well, and it's probably programs that they, just because of the pandemic, that they couldn't.
That very well could be, if we're only looking at the pandemic years, but that trend is
It's
pre-pandemic.
pre-pandemic too.
Yeah.
So when the sheriff talks about funding for approximately $30,000 for his, I'm sorry, I forgot the name of the program.
Rebound.
Yes, the rebound program. The sheriff could easily absorb that, especially if they're having savings in overtime due to the program. how much
Which
is
they absorbed this year.
right,
in the
and the
budget.
sheriff is anticipating in the law enforcement budget, they're gonna revert over 200,000 this year, and in the corrections budget, they're on track to revert over 400,000 this year.
Which is surprising,
Which is mainly the contract beds in corrections.
for operation or for the sheriff, I thought it would be much more because of salary savings, but I was surprised to see it so low. I know that they've been, he said multiple times, we're trying to hire, they're going through the academy, and so just to see that number so low, I expected it to be a little bit
11
bigger.
vacancies in corrections is what Chief Thomas said.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be a massive salary savings stacked up?
It is massive overtime because you have to cover every
Wow.
shift.
Because you have to
Wow.
cover
Yeah.
the shifts,
Cover
yeah.
every shift.
And then it would be
And
17
there's the
every
overtime
year,
is-
so time and a half.
And that's what I think, in a way, is more
Subsidized.
And
expensive.
another piece of that's been in the past, that there's inmates being detained in areas that are not designed for that detention.
exactly
And
right.
that takes extra FTE.
That is 7
Are you arguing
FTEs
for a
to stand
deflection
up a.
What's that?
Are you arguing for a knee flexion?
I'm just stating the facts.
We need that, but it takes 7 FTEs to cover an area, at a minimum, 7 FTEs to cover an area. And that's what they had to do when they started putting inmates in the holding.
Okay, I got it.
Yeah.
Retract the
Yeah,
question.
okay.
No, that's why you don't see more savings in corrections.
No, and I appreciated that question because that's kind of what I was wondering for the sheriff's side too. I was like, well, for law enforcement, I was like, well, why isn't there more?
Right.
Because they've been struggling.
Some groups just suffer and work doesn't get done or whatever, but law enforcement,
You don't have a
24/7,
choice.
they just don't,
Right.
they don't have that
Overtime.
That's
Yeah.
right, they
that
gotta cover the shift.
flexibility.
Huh.
Like the CPED can just, well, we've got a 300 or 400 single-family home backlog. People are just waiting longer for their permit.
That's right.
But in law enforcement, somebody's gotta be there to respond to the calls or book the people in the
That's
jail.
right.
Have to cover.
Any other questions about reversions?
No.
I just,
That was quick.
I
That was
just wanna
very
say that
resigned.
for the public's benefit, like, one of the trickiest things about county government is that, like, each one of these departments has a different business model, just as that one little element we just outlined. And there are people who spend their whole career, trying to understand the elements of one of these departments.
Right.
And we're trying to compare and contrast and operate, even-handedly across so many different business models. And that's why it's really complicated when we get into these issues. And it doesn't apply the same to public health, to the sheriff, to public works, to public defense, to the Superior Court. So, very daunting.
But if you don't plow the streets at the right time, you're gonna hear about it.
That's right, that's a whole different model, we're gonna
That-
talk about different business models.
Been there, done it.
But every office, and we've said this many times, every office and department does essential work for the county. Each one does it, as you said, their own business model to be able to provide those services in the best possible way. And every request before you is important. You just can't fund them all. That's what makes your job so hard. All right. You ready to look at timber?
I'll share my screen. If you're in the packet for today, it's on page 5. If not, it's a graph that says Thurston County timber revenue.
Let me try to find that one. Do you have it in your copy?
I don't know.
Which one- where is it? Where is it?
It's in today's packet, page 5.
Yep.
Same packet we were.
Yeah, just after the-
version.
Reversion
Oh,
document.
Bar graph.
Yes, it's just a high-level view of the timber revenue.
Okay.
It's, the graph represents from 2008 to today. It's as of 9/30, so September 30th, the actual data. You'll see that the gray color on the bar chart there is for the state trust land, so those are the state-owned land. Whereas the green is the county-owned land, and then you'll see the blue is the exercise tax. And so you can see the trend over those years, 2008 to 2022. Again, 2022 is year-to-date, so it's not a full year. I'm gonna circle back with you and get more information as to where some of this money is coming from, what land it's coming from. That analysis is gonna take a little bit longer, but this is a high-level look at what is going on with our timber revenues and how much is coming in and from where, what source.
So I feel like it's backwards from what you said, because you've got state forest land is, got the definition says county owned, and then on the key, that's gray.
State trust land is gray, federally granted trust land, am I correct?
You think? No,
State forest lands,
it's not there,
it's
is it?
gray. And state trust land.
Oh, I
Green
do
and
have it
state
backwards, I'm very
forest.
sorry about that confusion. Yes, that is incorrect.
Which
So-
one's incorrect, the colors or the names?
The names below, I stated them incorrect. So the state trust lands, where it says trust lands, that's federal money.
I don't think
That's
it's
the
in-
state-owned land, and forest is county. So the words are right, but they're not corresponding with the colors.
Can you say that
The
to
colors are wrong.
printer?
Yeah, so where it says
And
state.
that's it's on the table right here.
Oh, that's,
There are copies on the table.
okay.
So the green is what I wanna be looking at if I wanna look at the lands that the county deeded to the state. Even though the key says I would be looking at the gray.
Yes, it's the one, well, the one that says forest lands, that is county.
And that's,
That is
Gray.
gray.
so I wanna look at gray.
We'll look at gray.
Okay, so the chart is right, just the way you just said it is wrong. Okay, just wanna make sure. And and then I think maybe you just answered it, but to what extent can we tell, like, can we tie any of this revenue to particular cuts or particular DNR sales?
So I sat with Robin and she showed me some information where we're getting the actual revenue in. We can see codes, we can see tax codes in the area, and then so I'm gonna have to work with, the assessor and the treasurer to figure out where these codes are and the revenue is tying to what piece of land.
This is going to take us a while. So we can look at like the most recent 5 years and try to break it down by area, but we get a piece of paper, a PDF actually, that says this much money from this tax title area that's state forest land. So what we're gonna have to do, what Nicole is going to do, is figure out where that code is and tie that to the cut so that we're able to show you, like maybe on a map if we're really lucky, but we should be able to get back to areas, but it's some labor intensive work because it's all manual. There's nothing in a system that we
And
can.
I'm just wondering about, historically, it would be interesting, but like, as these things are happening, is what I'm interested in. Myself, I don't know about my seatmates, but, if I could know that they sent Thurston County $5,000 and they cut the Delica or Sunnyvale or whatever these cuts are called, and 10% of that cut was legacy forest, then I would like to just send that money back to DNR as a statement. We're not taking any money that you're generating by cutting our legacy trees. So that's how I'm interested in trying to figure out.
Okay,
So focus on this year.
So that
we
analysis.
don't wanna give that money back to the state.
Yeah,
Let's
I have
find
to say,
something
It's a
beneficial
tiny
to
amount of
do
money
with
and
it.
it's the only, we have to increase the pressure, and this is one way to do it.
It's not a tiny amount,
It is when you look at the number of legacy trees that are contained. I mean, legacy trees are the unprotected legacy trees are 4.5% of capital state forest. So even if they were, and this is just what's coming, and even if we just ballpark it and say, you know what, 4%, if we can't go more granular, then maybe the answer is just to say, we're sending you back 4.5% of everything you send us because you're not exempting our legacy forests.
Well, they just keep.
I'd like to get a lot more granular than that.
I absolutely agree with your policy position. What I'm saying is, why would we give that money back to the state where they say, woo-hoo, I've got this much money to do something else with, when maybe we could use that money in a constructive way that would help the citizens who are being affected or some climate change initiative.
I was like, why doesn't that
What if you devote
money
it
go
to that?
climate?
Don't give
Yeah.
it back.
It's this strategy has been effective in other political contexts. It gathers a lot of attention. It is a bold and meaningful statement by leaders.
I
To
think
show
a
leadership.
hunger strike would be best.
I mean, it's just an idea, but you know,
Alright.
I need to know, I mean, I asked the question because I'd like to kind of, you know, is it possible that the more granular it is, the more like even, you know, the better it's gonna be.
Okay,
And then to know the scope of it and the scale of it obviously is important.
so we absolutely can, as we receive the money trickles in over the year.
Yeah.
So some months we get $50 and some months we get $100,000. So it's very unpredictable month to month, but we absolutely, every month comes with a piece of paper that says this money came from here. Because, and again, we get the tax jurisdiction code because Thurston County isn't the only recipient of the money. We take the money from the sale that is sent to us and the treasurer distributes it to every taxing district within that code area. So, but we could certainly,
And I would only
if
be
you
talking
all
about
agree
that
to send back
slice
the
that would be
Thurston
coming
County
to
money.
Thurston County, not to our junior taxing district. That would be their
Yeah.
decision. I will be working with them.
The
and see if they
newspaper
trying
would
to-
say we were so rich, we were not spending all our
That's probably what the newspaper would say, actually.
And
not how I would-
certain legislative members. Yeah, but we'll work on that.
Yeah, I could focus in on this year so it's more pertinent and then circle back with the future.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and
what's the possibility
We
of?
also receive every year from from DNR what the planned sales are. I think we get that twice a year.
And this
So-
chart's showing me that, like, say in the last 4 years, we're getting less than $1 million a year, on average, or no, a little bit more. This past year, we got a little less than, like, 900 something. So let's say $1 million. And that's from all lands.
That is
There's the whole
all.
distinction about the county lands versus the forest lands. Honestly, there's,
Right.
from the legacy forest perspective, there's no distinction from my perspective. There is, though, in the sense that we have greater leverage over the county-owned lands because we could ask for them back. But I don't know that I'd wanna make that, slice that off. That would depend on kind of how much money we're talking about. But that could be a distinction we make, or we could ignore that distinction. The blue is what, excise tax?
Excise tax.
So that's
Yeah.
something that's different?
The excise tax comes in, it's almost a type of in lieu of, so it's the value of is it the value of the
Stumpage
The
value of the harvest.
timber, right? It's tied to the harvest and there's certain tax that we receive based on.
So it does connect to this,
It-
to the
it's all
cuts
connected.
and sales.
I think that's related to harvesting in federal lands, then we get the excise tax.
It is, well, here's the definition,
Is that
the
Bill?
stumpage value on the harvest of timber on public or private lands for commercial or
Oh,
industrial
no,
use.
so it's a tax on
It's
top
tax.
of the revenue
It's
generated.
a harvest tax,
Is this the money, okay, the title of this slide is Thurston County timber revenue.
right?
Yes.
Is this before it gets divvied up among junior
No,
beneficiaries? This is just what we're left with.
Just the that we keep.
more money comes into the
Right.
county and goes off to
That's right,
library.
quite a bit more.
Okay.
And it is as complicated as it has been just to sort out what the three pieces are. Well, I've been, when I have a few spare minutes over the last 12 years, I've been trying to find a way to predict how much timber revenue we come in, even with the notices that we receive of what the sales are projected to be. There is no way to figure out how much Thurston County is going to put in our general fund. I've not found a decent way to forecast it yet. So what we've done is anything that comes over a certain dollar threshold is considered windfall, and we're putting it in the rainy day fund now.
But it ultimately is, like, if it just all came in and it's general fund in terms of
All of this is general fund.
where it could go.
Right, there's a little bit that gets, because it's connected to property tax. It's distributed based on property tax allocations. A little bit goes into the road fund, a little bit goes into conservation futures, a tiny bit, a little bit goes to Medic One, and a chunk goes into the general fund. So if you are thinking about, well, we couldn't take I suppose that you could refuse the portion that goes to the road fund.
Public Works gets a portion of it.
Yep, Public Works gets a piece of it because they get
A piece of what's on
property
this
tax.
chart or additional?
Not, this is only general fund.
Okay,
So more than this stays with the county in these three other funds as well.
Because the Public Works, the road levy share is tied to the property tax, and that's how they get their cut.
Property.
You don't think you can just have a conversation with Hillary Trans about this and fix it that way? It'd be easier than having staff do all this.
We can watch it come in. I receive at the same time the treasurer receives the money, I receive notice from DNR that says, here's where the timber was from, the tax
I'm interested in knowing what is, how granular can I'm not asking
I
for,
can get down to the cut.
yeah.
So like you said, the
Yeah.
Delica cut. I think that I get
This
that
money
much
came from that cut.
information.
That would be, I think, all of
think
the,
so.
absolutely as much as the board would ever need if it wanted to think about something like that. We wouldn't have to have any more detail than that.
Yeah, we can do that.
And if that's not overly burdensome, that would be.
I'm sitting here thinking, what do those pieces of paper look like? And I do believe they've got the name of the cut.
Okay. We can follow up on that at a later time.
All right, so that's timber. We got about 11 minutes until Patrick's due to come in. Break, do you wanna take a break? Yep.
Okay, we'll take a break. Nicole, do you need your charger?
I just realized I still have it. You are live, Commissioners.
Okay, it is 2:34 PM. We are back from break and we are picking up with public defense. And so Robin, passing it straight to you.
Thank you, Commissioner, and I am going to hand it over to Patrick O'Connor. He is our Director for the Public Defense Office in Thurston County. And thank you for being here this afternoon, Patrick, and the board would like to chat with you about your request for the business analyst position to support the new defense software.
Thank you, Robin. And good afternoon, Commissioners. Patrick O'Connor, Director of Thurston County Public Defense. Mia Pagnata, our Executive Assistant, is joining me here today. Thank you for the time to give you an overview of my request and answer any questions as best I can. As I mentioned before, we got started here. Jose Vargas, our Fiscal Manager, has a medical appointment today and can't be with us, but he feels very passionate about this request as well. So I will do my best to answer your questions and give you an overview of the position. Dennis Osorio might be logging in today as well to answer any questions that the board may have that are a little more technical perhaps than I can articulate. I think our budget change request does a pretty good job of overview of what the position entails. Just to recap, the Prosecuting Attorney's Office and Public Defense went in together on a joint venture supported by this board to replace our case management system. We did so and we went live with that system actually last September, so we're just crossing over a year mark of go live with Journal Technologies product of eDefender on our side and eProsecutor on the prosecutor side. I'm happy to report overall that the system is performing very, very well. A lot of challenges along the way to get to this point, but we're thrilled with it internally. Staff are thrilled with it internally. It has vastly improved morale. It has vastly improved our workflows, responsiveness, and then internally for our business operations has made us much more efficient and are able to produce reports that we really frankly weren't able to produce before. So far so good, crossing this first year threshold. The reason why I made this request and why I believe it qualifies as an emergency under what the board is to consider in terms of funding requests at this point is having lived with the system now for a year. We really have realized all the demands such a system of its size puts on staff, specifically when it comes to technical expertise to problem solve on a daily basis on issues that a system of this size and nature comes along with this kind of implementation. What we've experienced, I didn't make this request previously. I know the Prosecuting Attorney's Office did, and the board did fund their position, is it was challenging for me to forecast all the complications and challenges that the system would have on a daily basis that we've now lived with for a year. So having lived with the system for a year, experienced the demands on a weekly basis, I make this request because frankly, going another year without making an effort to try to address this from my staff, I feel is bad leadership on my part. And so I'm here today to make this request. Specifically, what we've done, and this is a conservative estimate as far as time. So Jose Vargas, our fiscal manager, has been our essentially led our implementation team for the system. He estimates conservatively that he spends about 30% of his work week on exclusively eDefender fixes. That's programming, working with the prosecutor's office on their side, working with the company as well. And our implementation team also comprises of what it turned into, as best we can, subject matter experts, which is our paralegals. And so our paralegals, along with Mia, on a weekly and daily basis, have to go into the system to make fixes to the system, and those are programming fixes. So it's things like codes. We have a lot of data that exchanges back and forth every day from the prosecutor system over to our system. And although the system is wonderful, it's a software system, so it has bugs, it has glitches, it has transactions that don't come through, and a transaction could be something like a whole batch of police reports that somehow doesn't make it through the system, and we have to go in, code the system. Again, I'm not gonna articulate this perfectly, but either our fiscal manager or our paralegals have to go in and recode something as simple as that. It's not simple because it happens all the time, but that's really getting outside the scope of their employment, to be frank, their classifications of fiscal managers, paralegals, and legal assistants doing coding within the system. So that's sort of just one tangible example of something that we see on a daily basis. That's not to mention a whole host of other challenges and workload that a system of this size brings with it on not just a daily basis, but on a weekly basis. And I can highlight some of those things here if that's what you'd like me to do. But I'm also going to pause and see if there's any questions the board has at this point.
Thank you, Patrick. Questions?
You said the prosecutor has a position, you don't.
Last year, the board did fund the same position for the
Yeah.
prosecutor's office, and Commissioner, I think this board knows me well enough. I don't generally, on behalf of public defense, compare ourselves to the prosecutor, but this is that shared enterprise system where we're really working within the same system. The board did fund that position for the prosecutor's office, and I've reviewed their budget change request and their justification. Ours is very similar. We've been able to provide, I think, more detail in our request because, again, we've lived with the system now for a year, and at the time they were prospective, and I think rightfully so. Their request makes a lot of sense, and now I see the value of that request.
Being as you folks are in the same ballgame, so to speak.
Yeah.
Why is it that the prosecutor's person, couldn't work with Jose or whomever and make this work? I like to think that Dennis's shop should really be overseeing it, but I suppose everybody's a little bit different. I don't know enough to ask an intelligent question about this topic, to be honest with you, but I really do think that we can consolidate some of our activities. And I just wonder, is that a possibility? Could that happen so that we don't have to add FTEs, whether it's with an end date or not, I guess?
Yeah, it's a fair question, Commissioner, and I put some thought into that. The biggest issue with that really has to do with the nature of our offices and the nature of our work, and specifically confidentiality obligations that both our offices have, very sensitive data within the system. So the way the system works is we share data that's to be shared, things like police reports and things that the law allows for us to share, but contained in the system and in each and every case is very confidential information that really should only be accessed by either a staff member of that office. I just don't think sharing those roles by one individual, it would compromise. I'm not going to speak for the prosecutor, but I have a feeling he would have the same red flag reservations for a single individual to be accessing the prosecutor's confidential case management system and the defender's case management system. I think what it would do, it would significantly limit what that individual could do. Say, I'll give you a tangible example. This morning we had an issue with the system, and it had specifically to do with a case file from our perspective, one of our clients. There's attorney confidential work product notes in that case file that would be accessible, and even at times access to remedy the issue that we're trying to fix. So if that individual had access to that and read that information, it would put them in a very some significant ethical dilemmas for that individual to then later that afternoon go into the prosecutor's office or their system and try to fix something on their end. So I just don't think it would really work.
Okay, well, what about if it was a Dennis employee? And then he's a neutral party and has nothing, he's just gonna take care of the process. He doesn't care that the guy told the co-defendant something or anything else. I mean, I'm just trying to figure out a way that we can be more cost effective.
Yeah, I can certainly appreciate that. I think, at least speaking from my perspective, when we're talking about individual clients, they would have to waive certain confidentialities to allow somebody outside our department to be accessing that very sensitive data. It's covered if it's staff within our department. We don't need specific.
I guess that's my question is, why is it covered if you have a clerical staff or a computer person? I don't know. Why would that automatically be covered? Because they were kind of working for you, I guess, but is there some legal issue, moral issue? I don't know.
Isn't it part of attorney-client privilege?
It's part of attorney-client
Yeah, but
privilege.
what about one of your secretarial
Right.
positions doing something like that? I can kind of see loyalty to you or to John.
Yeah.
You know, I could kind of see that. I can't see a tech person carrying one way or the other. And, okay, you deputize the guy, and John deputized the guy, or to get around it. I don't, somehow, so that we're not wasting. I'm not saying you don't need it.
Sure.
And we need to fix it. But do we truly need a full-time FTE working on just this issue? I know we're gonna free up Jose and maybe some others, but gosh, it just seems like you're in the same game.
Yeah.
That's all.
Yeah, I guess
Going
that's,
into my issue that I
I
was
guess
going
that's a
into.
fair question.
Why, did
Not
you guys
necess-
already talk about this?
No, that's a fair question, meaning not necessarily, because I think Patrick makes an excellent point on making sure that we have an individual that doesn't cross the firewall. That's what I call it. It's a firewall between the prosecutors and the defenders, the public defenders. But I think I think what you're getting to perhaps is it really a full-time position
Well,
or a part-time position?
happy to speak to that. We've got some numbers, and I think again, I mean, I don't think it would be a one full-time position to serve both roles, even if you could, but I really don't think you can, Commissioner. So your example of, let's say, a paralegal having access in our office to that information, they're all bound by the same ethical rules that the defense attorney is, which is to protect that confidential information. So even though a role in our office may not be an attorney, they're all operating under the same ethical rules that the attorney is bound by, which is this is part of the defense team, the paralegal, the legal assistant, the business tech, would all be operating under the same rules of being able to have access to that information and be duty bound to keep that information confidential and not be shared with anybody else without a client's consent. In terms of the position itself, and again, this is coming from Jose, and I think this board has a high regard for Jose. He did some conservative estimates on hours spent in these past 12 months by staff. I already mentioned his labor effort is about 30% of his work week, but that also combines, I want to combine the paralegal hours spent as well as me and mine. So I'm in that system all the time.
Are you a programmer now?
Solving, I am not a programmer. I am getting there. I am limited, but I am the trainer. We all have been, you know, it's not just going and fixing it, it's program management, it's training, new staff turnover. It's everything from, you know, I forgot my user account and my password to real hard, you know, more in-depth programming. But we took a look at some of the estimated labor hours, and we're just about, in the 12 months, an estimate of a little over 2,024 hours of combined staff time at a cost to our department of about $93,000. And that's hours spent. And going forward in the years to come, there's no reason to believe that those hours would change or it might even increase. So the FTE cost that we're looking at here, total salary and benefits at the top of the range, is $107,000. So the hours we're dedicating right now, and of course that takes time away from other staff members, other duties, but it's that pressing of a need on a daily basis that they have to attend to fixing things that come up in the system. And I can itemize some of those things as well. It's not just the attorneys in our office too. I just want to make sure we're clear that we also obviously work with all our contracting attorneys, and the system serves those contracting attorneys as well. So there's system management issues that come up with our contractors, which is unique to us, right? So in the eDefender suite, we have access for contracting attorneys to the system so we can easily exchange data and information there. There are problems with that require fixes and program fixes and workflow fixes within the system that we're trying to do. So I just want to highlight that it's not just all the staff in our office, it's also our independent contracting attorneys that we've seen issues with the system that supports this request. There's a whole host of other
Yeah, I'm gonna jump in. So how many hours did you say?
About 2,024 is what Jose is estimating.
And I will tell you that 2,040 hours is considered full-time for FTE and budgeting purposes.
Yeah, we had it at 2,080, but if it's 2,040, you would know better, but it's
2,040, I mean, you're just under a
pretty,
full-time.
I mean, it's a full-time
That's
position. And
full-time.
again, I wouldn't have been able to give you that data last year because we really didn't know. And we knew we had to put a lot of time and energy and staff hours into the ramp up to go live, and we were willing to dedicate all that staff time to do that. But post go live, that's the number of hours that we're spending, and as Robin mentioned, it's essentially a full-time position. So that also gives me the sense, Commissioner, I guess to your point, that could one person serve both? These are just the hours that it's been taking just to serve us.
So, but you're basically, a dentist out of IT can't do it either, Dennis is person.
Well, I think, I
Because of
don't know if
those-
Dennis is on, he was gonna try to join. Courtney Wilson has been the project manager, and she was gonna try to make it here today too, but she was double booked to help support, because she's really seen our struggles with, not struggles, but just the challenges and workload impacts. I don't, I'll be frank with you, Commissioner, I talked to Dennis about this. It doesn't matter to me where the FTE resides for our, that exclusively serves our department. The option is either the FTE.
It has to be exclusive though, that's the key.
It does. I mean, I just, again,
I mean, Dennis couldn't send you a guy to fix it and send another
have
guy
to-
to fix,
you just have to send a guy to work in my office every day, to be honest. Like, I don't know what other shared duties that that FTE in Dennis's shop could do other than be responsive every day to these issues that we've experienced. In terms of on an org chart and where the position would lie, it makes sense with this challenge on the ethical side of things, and that was the conversation I had with Dennis, that if he doesn't have a preference, if the FTE, if supported, would reside in our organization, again, because of the confidentiality issues that I talked a little bit about.
So this is
Commissioner-
what we, oh, I'm so sorry.
No, I was just gonna say Commissioner Edwards just brought up a really good point. And my question wasn't about public defense, it was about CPED and public health and the hiring of that public health made about a business analyst as well. So my question in regards to these big projects that we're handing out, and if I understand it, it is a huge workload for each office and department to carry on their own, and but I guess, and this question I guess is more for Mira and Robin, right? Like, we have a centralized IT, so when we're doling out these big projects, why is that not a consideration of IT, that we need a business analyst for this office because they're gonna need help in implementing? Are we just not having the foresight enough to do that, or like what's happening? And
So I'm gonna jump in, because this is what I was about to say. This is what we were talking about earlier in the week, about the model under which we consolidated IT.
yeah,
Every function in IT, we put the staff in IT, if they're doing countywide, typical service, supporting a computer, giving general information that they would give to any office or department. Each office and department, however, that has a business-centric software has many of the offices and departments, not all of them, but many do already have a IT person that is dedicated to the maintenance of that software. They know the business, they know the system, and that is the only system they work on, is restricted to that business. They don't provide general support for computers, they don't install or do a new.
But those embedded IT support individuals on the departments, they're part of the whole IT structure.
They are part of it?
No,
Public Works, all those, and Josh talked about that yesterday. And his business analyst is part of the IT structure.
We can show you on that. So we have a difference of understanding, but I can show you in the budget how they're budgeted, where they're at in the, no, not on a rate. The reporting structure
The
was,
whole argument we were
and we kept
exploring
it
this
that way.
model, and I recall even Public Works has too.
Yep.
It was an agreement, obviously they will pay for the service because they will be embedded, right? But they will be reporting in a way to the larger context of IT because we're gonna be missing an opportunity to be consistent.
That's right, because the public works people were doing generalized work. But there is a business IT analyst in CPED that reports to CPED that only does CPED work. Just like there is in financial services,
The offices are
just
different.
like the offices were left out, but I'm saying that there are some departments that have business-centric software where we left the business case in the department. We did not move those people to IT.
But I guess going back to my question, right, when we're doling out these large replacement projects,
Why didn't we think about ongoing
why
cost?
wasn't one of that, like, you know, just a heads up, public defense, this is going to take a lot of work hours, this is kind of what you're going to have to do. It's probably best that you get a business analyst, and that way, I mean, us as commissioners can also have that financial viewpoint of, yes, okay, the prosecutor made their request and public defense is gonna need one too. Same thing that we saw yesterday with CPED and public health now, that they need one to implement their system, instead of having these doled out requests. And I'm not sure if that's a request that we can make to our project managers as they're doing this large system replacements.
I think that we never anticipated this level of need. Go ahead.
So you guys are right on point. I mean, Commissioner Edwards asked most of my questions, but I guess I just have, I guess I'd like Pat to maybe just talk about the values of this system, because some systems we buy because, like with the CPED system, that's gonna add functionality and service to the public. So even if it's costing us more money, we're getting something out of that. This, I would expect, would have made, in the public, this is internal of our lawyers, our staff. I would expect this system would make your job, these software systems are supposed to make things easier and less staff intensive. And it's weird to be spending a lot of money on a system and then having to add staff to support a system that I thought was designed to make the cases, you get your discovery easier, you wouldn't have to deal with all the paper, cases would go more efficiently, they'd get through the system faster. Ultimately, we would need less public defenders and prosecuting attorneys because you guys would be working, it's like automating a factory, right? You eventually need less human bodies because you've got systems in place and technology that's doing that. So what is this doing for us besides making us hire more staff that we're not all that happy about, as you can see, that's making defense justice system better in Thurston County?
It's a very fair question, and when I came to you, along with the prosecutor's office, that's exactly why we wanted this system. And it has been incredibly valuable to not just our offices, I'll speak for myself, for our office, but for the justice system as a whole. Now, I couldn't quantify how many processes that we've streamlined, right, that we've gleaned from going to, we're an entirely paperless office. So we went from paper office, paper files, millions of documents in paper form to everything completely paperless within the system. I can't tell you how invaluable that has been to streamlining the work, right? So the county is getting better service, the county is getting better processes from the attorneys and from staff. We have reduced, frankly, staff time on mindless administrative tasks that the system, our previous system, sort of handcuffed us with, and also, between our offices. So the synergy between the offices is we are exchanging massive amounts of data every day. We used to have to exchange that data people to people, right? And person to person, and physical document to physical document. So can I tell the board that that has saved, $1 million? I can't quantify that. But what I can tell you is that it's providing for a better justice system. So it depends on what you're asking in terms of a rate of return or a return on investment. Is your expectation that investing in a case management system, the return on investment is a better justice system? That I can unequivocally tell you yes. Is the return on investment, how much money has this saved the taxpayers? I can't give you that answer other than to anecdotally tell you it absolutely has, because it's producing a better justice system. Now, unfortunately, we rolled this out in the greatest pandemic perhaps this country's ever seen. So that has certainly put a big asterisk on it. But I can tell you, if the goal of investing in this system, which I think it was, and that was my, and John as well, our pitch to the board to invest in this, it's better justice, right? I can tell you right now, Commissioner, how many open cases any one of our attorneys has at any given point. I could never tell you that before. I'd have to go in their file cabinet and pull them all out one by one. I can tell you how many trials our attorneys have had. I can tell you how many motions they've filed this year. I can tell you all the bail data that you want. So can I tell you what's the goal of the return on investment? Is it a better justice system? I can unequivocally tell this board yes. And I think our community wants a better justice system. But to get there, you're right, to your point, why do we have, to your point as well, Commissioner, why am I coming to you now asking for another position to support this effort? I'm doing so because of the need, and I didn't come to you last year, or I couldn't really make that argument. We've had to live with the system now for a year, and it's really invaluable for us to have this additional position to really help us continue to get better, and also the fidelity to my staff and their classifications and their duties, right? So me as a director, it's not fair for me to ask paralegals and legal assistants or my fiscal manager to become programmers, right? And so they'll do it, and they have done it. But at some point as a director, I have to say this is getting too far from field. In addition, I'm making this ask just at the baseline needs that we've seen in a year. There's a lot of things that I would love to see the system do that it's capable of doing that we can't get there just yet because I don't have a position like this to say, okay, now you've got a handle on fixing the daily things that we need. Now I want you to help us improve the justice system by making the system more efficient in XYZ manner. And I'm not there yet. And frankly, I'm not going to be able to get there because the dedication of hours of staff is just that daily maintenance that a system like this has. That's not to mention when we start onboarding body cams, it's a lot of data. There are a lot of things coming down the pike that is going to be directly applicable to our system and a whole host of other things that I won't bore you with, that the system is going to need to be a direct part of, and I need the support within our department to make that happen. So I hope I'm answering your question.
No, you are, and I mean, so what I'm hearing is, for example, the data that you're getting, you can analyze that and potentially make better decisions about allocation of resources in your department. Maybe you'll be asking for new lawyers at a slower rate over time because of efficiencies that are occurring. I was one of your contract lawyers, so I remember that I had to get in my car and drive to your office to pick up a disc of, convenience store, security cam footage. And now I can just get that through the portal, and that'll mean I'm charging you less for that case if I'm by the hour. And that should, that'll show in dollars and cents.
Yes.
Okay. I needed to hear that because,
Okay. Yeah.
I needed to hear all that
Yeah.
because,
Sure. Well, those are, again, that's.
because I share Commissioner Mejia's frustration about, we're not, we don't like getting piecemeal.
Yeah.
Oh, do this, and
Right.
then, now you made a commitment, and then you can't get out of it.
Sure, and I'll be candid.
And then you find out the cost is twice what you thought it was, and you're hamstrung.
Sure, and I'll be candid, I didn't have the foresight at the time to say, in addition to the support for this case management system, I also need this specific FTE, right? I probably, that would have been a real reach for me if you'd asked those questions of me, and I would have said, I don't know why, but I think we need one, right? As opposed to living within the system for a year. I do want to make the distinction, I don't know if I'm up against it or not, that this is a business application technician 2 position, not a business analyst. So it's a range 12 position. The analyst position is at 16, so it's a cheaper FTE,
Same as the prosecutor has?
same as the prosecutor.
Go ahead, sir.
Does this tell you, if anything, you're transferring back and forth, might have to do with the Blake case?
Let me make sure I'm understanding your question, Commissioner. The
You're
trans,
able to tag them as related to.
Something to do with Blake?
oh, I can.
I'm not,
Great example. This is a great example to your question, right? I can go back to my office and by later this afternoon, I can tell you how many Blake cases we have currently pending and how many we've resolved.
so
It's over 1,000.
this'll help you with the Blake problem, is what I'm getting at.
Cannot.
We already had this
We
plan,
can't
right?
thank
Why?
Let me,
Because we already, with the
so
purchase order-
Commissioner, let me give you a very good example of why the system does help me with the Blake case.
No, I'm not questioning.
He's coming in, he's
Bill
coming in.
it to the
I'm trying
city.
to, I'm trying to get somewhere to help you.
Yeah.
I'm on your side. I just, you should have been in here when we're talking about a $10 million shortfall, and you'd understand
Oh,
our
okay.
position or something.
Well, I'd rather not hear
He's
that.
He's trying to be inventive as to who should pay.
Yeah, I'm not doubting your
Helping
need,
Yeah,
but then the other piece of it is the licensing and the
Yeah.
software and all that comes with it. When we make a purchase like that, kind of goes back to what Commissioner Mejia was bringing up, that,
Yeah.
you know, okay, we got a good deal on this
Sure.
for 50,000, but we got to spend 250 now to make it work.
right. But I can just give you, just a quick, so just to piggyback on that, and if that furthers your arguments, great. I'll just give you the facts of the benefit of the system, right? So we have a grant through State Office of Public Defense that funds my Blake team, 2 lawyers and 1 legal assistant, right? And so within the system, every case is flagged and tagged as a Blake case, and we can track it. I have data obligations to that grant, of course, and I'm able to produce those data reports using the case management system in a matter of, it takes no time at all. And so that's just something just immediately tangible related to the
Well,
Blake
I can't
case in the
use
system.
I can't stand it that we have these artificial restrictions on us once in a while.
I mean, it's
Could we use our-
artificial,
Throw it out there too.
but there's not a one time.
Huh?
I know it's not a one time, but cover it until 2024.
It's not
Well,
ARPA, it's
But
not
we're gonna
COVID
fix it,
related.
we're gonna hire somebody, a business analyst, whatever. We're gonna fix the problem for Patrick, so he doesn't have the problem 2 years from now, or a year from now, we're gonna fix it. They
It's-
can't sell us something that just continually doesn't work. We gotta do something better than that.
So.
I mean, we're paying a license fee
It's not a
and-
COVID-related activity, so we cannot use ARPA
And it
money.
will help us with the backlog.
Yeah, and that's COVID. I don't
It
care what
won't
we
help
do,
us
we
with
gotta
the
do something
backlog.
about
And
another
it
funding.
is not a case, while it is supporting the legal process, what it is, it's an administrative cost of, we could allocate it out and charge a tiny little piece of it to Blake and a tiny little piece
about
of it to
80% of it
ARPA.
to Blake. and then
About
we'll-
90% would be general fund.
No, I tell you, you gotta stretch this a little more.
Yeah,
Well,
there is no auditor that would call this
Well, it sounds like a big assistance to the Blake process for me.
No, not big, no.
No.
Yeah, his workload is beyond Blake and.
I know, but
yeah, it's certainly part of it, and the system's comprehensive in all aspects of accounting for, all the work that we do, so.
I have a question, again, I guess I'm gonna go back to the issue of when these huge projects are being, and I understand these projects, a lot of these systems hadn't been replaced in a very, very, very long
Yes,
time.
That is a big deal.
So coming in and trying to replace these systems, right, it's a lot of updating, it's a lot of data management, and Patrick, it's not like I'm I completely understand on, why you need this. My question is, when we're doing these large system replacements, and why can't it go under maybe that budget, right? Because we're replacing the system and then we also need the admin staff to help us replace those systems. Is there a possibility that it can be budgeted from that fund on,
Until we get it.
and do you see kind of like trying?
I see where you're going. That fund, the only revenue that fund has is billing to his office. So
General fund.
then you'd have to put the money in his office
Okay,
to pay the bill to bill it out of that fund.
okay.
So it's not a savings to the general fund, if you will. And I will also say that I don't know the public defense had a system. Certainly not a comprehensive system prior to this getting stood up, because I remember 6 or 7 years ago, the then director, the new director at the time, coming to visit me and saying, oh my God, we need a system. And the prosecutor had Damien. You had Damien too, but Damien didn't work for you all at all.
Well, we'll keep it professional. Agreed.
Yeah, so that was my understanding. Damien was not working, and the prosecutor was pursuing a system I want to call Jazz. It
I can't
wasn't,
recall it, but
it was
it was
something
this,
like that.
if I recall, it was the next iteration of
Right,
that
it was the
system.
next iteration of Damien. It kept getting delayed and delayed. The prosecutor, we were encouraging the prosecutor to work with public defense to have a joint process. Pretrial services was a part of that. Ended up getting a different system for them, but a joint but separate system
Right.
for public defense and the prosecutor. It would have been badly needed. But again, at the time, when IT, and this is a conversation for Dennis, when IT looks at the cost of the system, they look at the cost of buying it and standing it up. And then they will also factor in the future maintenance licensing costs. They have never said, oh, and you're gonna need someone to take care of it.
So is our maintenance, so I know what licensing costs, but what are they considering maintenance costs to be? Because I would
Those
consider
are
maintenance.
costs that you pay to the software
Okay,
company.
because I would consider
for-
maintenance costs to be what,
When the
Yeah, no, they
company,
don't
when
think
the
that-
company
that-
provides
okay.
maintenance
No,
support to the
there's,
system.
it's what you
I
pay
think
to,
we need to,
Yeah.
into that structure, we need to consider the implementation of these projects, because I feel like
Right.
that's the piece that's missing.
operating cost.
It's
It's
the-
the operating cost, beyond just the license and the money that you pay to the,
But that's an excellent point, but I,
what we're
but
starting
IT,
to
I'm
do
just
with capital.
thinking about this because IT will have a very difficult time to understand the business needs.
Exactly.
Because what Patrick is saying, we got this brand new system, this Cadillac. They didn't have even a Honda before. And now what they're trying to do is find somebody who actually can drive it better. And they realized they need that person in the last year. So, and it's because they understand the business needs of the person, of the public.
And that's why you
office.
embed them in the departments.
Right, so so IT will be very difficult for the new Dennis to determine what will be the business needs of that department after any system is implemented. So, but you bring a good point though, but I'm trying to find out how that could work.
Well, like maybe even a recommendation of like, just a heads up, like I'm sure
Yeah.
they would have been like, just a heads up, like all of this data, it's gonna be a lot of data management, just so you're prepared and.
As an
ahead.
example, and I was a user of the court system, for a long time, and whenever, I don't know who rolled out that system for electronic documents in district court. You know what I'm talking
Yeah,
about?
I know what you're talking
Yeah.
about.
That was the worst possible. Wait, that was the biggest waste of money, like that to me seemed like maybe somebody with IT, you know, that didn't understand the needs of the court system, but that system did not work. I mean, the public defenders that were there day in, day out, you guys got familiar with it. And us poor lawyers that were private, we had to beg, luckily I knew some public defenders and I begged them to every single time they had to help me do it because it would change every single time and it was so many steps and.
Still use it.
I mean,
Yes,
that
that is still there. We
that
haven't,
cannot be.
I've
we
spoken with
haven't
Judge about
replaced
that.
that yet.
Well, I mean, at the time that I became commissioner, it was still physically there, but we weren't really using it. At least, I mean, maybe that changed, but there was a point in time where it was just always down and the judges, we were doing workarounds and it was basically not used. And I mean, that's just an example of like, it shouldn't have ever been.
Yeah, I can't tell you
Absolutely,
how much we
and there's a few more examples in the county. Because, and that's where we changed the business model as to how we purchase new systems.
Odyssey's mine.
Because when, in the past, we used to just hear the bells and whistles of a vendor. And we just bought into the software application based on the bells and whistles this vendor told us. When we put that into our real world, exactly the challenges that you are experiencing. So we have changed that business model. And this exercise, the public defense and the prosecutor was, I believe, the first project that we went through, stop and saying what application meets our needs. Let's identify what our needs are. And after we developed the business needs, those are the premises and the request for proposals went out. And then you determine what vendor is gonna be able to meet the business needs. So we fundamentally changed because of what you said.
Right, and we hired a project manager in IT who assists us to evaluate and then obtain these large projects. You approved one, the board approved one a few years ago, and then you just authorized a second one. And those two ladies are constantly busy and invaluable because the process that we go to determine our requirements before we go out shopping for a system is gonna ensure we get what we need, not just some pretty cool thing that someone
Well, I mean,
dreams
like,
up.
and I know all of you probably had to work with Secure Access Washington, and that's at the state.
Yeah.
It's awful. Did any of you have to go through the process of trying to get an exemption for the long-term care insurance? That was,
Yeah.
I mean, I can tell you that 50% of the public could not have done it. Just couldn't have done it. I mean, it took every effort that I had to understand. You had to create this account, and then create that account, and then go into, and the menus looked the same, but they weren't the same. You hit dead ends.
And if you
Nobody
were-
was there to explain it to you.
If you were a state employee and set up an account and then wanted to set up a personal account, you had an issue because they're like, you're already in the system. And I'm like,
I mean, these kinds of systems, and it's hard for us at our board level because we had this need, okay, authorize the funding. Well, then you put out the RFP. We're not part of that. And then we have to rely on staff to go, this was the best vendor, this kind of website, you know, all these systems. And then it could end up being terrible and we feel powerless because it's like, I would have never funded anything this terrible. And I'm not saying any of ours are terrible, I don't actually know. You know, there's ERP, there's Manda, there's eDefender. You showed me eDefender and it didn't look terrible. When I did that on the one-on-one. You know, the website's coming, I don't know what that's gonna be, but it's like,
It
I,
sounds like yours is a huge success.
if I could know at the front
We're
and
worried
end
about the ERP.
what it was gonna be, I would say, no, I'm not spending a dime on that. But you don't know, it's like we have to initiate a process, and then by the time you know, it feels like it's too late.
Yeah.
I'll make one more final comment. I think 315 was our mark, so, I think you bring up a good point, Commissioner, in terms of, you know, looking at our system replacements, you know, moving forward. But, you know, and in this case, yeah, in hindsight, I probably would have made this recommendation on inception, but, we are where we are right now. Again, I'll really, circling back, really appreciate the support in purchasing the system. It has transformed our office, and I'm sure prosecutors as well, but it's been a great return on investment for the justice system. And if there's any specific action items that you need me to get back to you on, please let me know, and I'd be happy to provide more information.
Thank you, Commissioner
Thanks,
Evans.
Patrick.
You know, during the time period that Robin said we had a problem back there, actually 14, 15, 16, 17, in that era, that budget went up about 40% in that time frame. Trying to address a lot of problems.
That's absolutely true. We
And,
did, and
We did
part
our
of our
best.
challenge, and part of the challenge that the department had was to be able to predict the expense. They didn't know how many cases they had, they didn't have any idea how long they were to close. They had a hard time keeping track of the number of cases that were out to contract panel attorneys. It was, any amount of data was extremely hard to get. That made forecasting extremely
One
difficult.
thing about it, we got some ending, you're doing such a good job that you got some ending
Yes,
fund
you are.
balance we can look at or
This will be
something.
our third year in a row for sure. Budget since 2017.
Just threw dollars.
Well, but thank you for bringing that up, Robin, and that was in my notes, but I enjoyed this conversation even better than going through my notes. But the business application side of this system for us has also transformed how we do business. So it's not just the nuts and bolts of attorneys doing work. We have revised and improved our entire business process through eDefender, which takes us to our next step of being even more efficient and forecasting timely responses to invoice. We do a lot of invoicing. When I was first appointed, I think we were the third highest customer of financial services. I don't know where we rank now, but we used to do so much invoicing. This system has improved the entire business side of our department as well in ways that would probably bore you to tears. So I know you probably got something else. Thank you for your time, and if you need anything else, just let me know.
Thank you so much, Patrick.
Yep, thank you.
Okay, Robin,
Thank you.
are we jumping on to the
District
next or are we
Court,
taking a
10
break?
minutes until
District Court is coming up in 10 minutes.
Okay, so we're taking a break.
Okay,
We get an 8-minute break,
think you got something?
You are
Okay, and we are back from break. It is 3:33 PM and we have Judge Buckley from District Court who's going to be walking us through their budget. But first, Robin, anything you'd like to add?
Thank you, Commissioner. Just taking a moment to welcome Judge Buckley and Frankie. Thank you so much for coming this afternoon, and thank you for rearranging your schedules to be able to be here with the commissioners. As you know, the board has asked specifically for you to talk about the request for the adult probation position and to talk about the reductions in revenue that your office is seeing, and then if they have any other questions, there will be an opportunity to just have a conversation.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Good to see all of you. Commissioners, nice to see you in your official capacity. So number one was the adult probation counselor, which is a position we have in our probation office. We have had, you granted that, which allowed us to make great improvement in the service we provide to the probation department because of caseloads that we have there. We have really high caseloads, even now, even with that position, and they obviously would be much higher without that position. When the position was granted back in May of 2021, there was an expectation at that time that the Blake decision would result in the refiling of drug possession cases into district court. That hasn't happened. So I would guess it probably hasn't happened for two reasons. One is just, I'm suspecting a policy reason at the prosecutor's office that they may have decided not to pursue some type or number of cases, and I don't know this, I haven't asked how come we haven't seen any of these. But the other is they're faced with the issue that's we're all still working with in district court, which is significant case backlog. So, we have roughly 1,000 cases that we would say fall into our backlog of cases that normally would have been resolved by this point, but haven't been because we started off with, court being closed, and then we transitioned to reduced calendars, and we've been running full calendars for about a year, but we still haven't caught up. And so we have this large backlog of cases, and my sense in watching it is that the prosecutors are triaging their cases and trying to proceed through that backlog with the cases they believe are the most significant from a public safety standpoint. So lower level drug possession cases typically don't rise to that level. It would be domestic violence cases and DUIs in district court, which would be the primary ones that they would be pursuing. So whether they're choosing not to file them, whether they're dismissing them, I don't know. But we just haven't seen this large shift from superior court to district court that we had anticipated with the concurrent numbers of folks being added onto probation from that. Now, what we have found with the position that you authorized is that even though it's not dealing with the Blake situation, it has been of great assistance to us in dealing with the caseload that each of our probation counselors are carrying. Probation counselors should have a caseload in the neighborhood of 75 or so at any one time, and even with 3, they are maintaining a caseload of about 115. So significantly over what the sort of national standard for probation counselors is, but significantly less than it was prior to getting that position. I think it was more like 150 at the time that the position was authorized. 175. Or 175, thank you, Frankie. So it was even higher. And what that means is when we meet with our probation director and say, okay, what are the caseloads there? And when he says it's 175, we have 2 options: get another probation counselor so we can drop the caseloads down to something that can actually be effectively worked, or we have to say, okay, we will stop putting certain cases on probation, which means maybe it's not the second time DUI that's going to go on probation. Maybe we're going to say they have to have had 2 priors or 3 priors. Or maybe it's not the first DV offense that we're gonna put on probation. Maybe it's gonna have to be, they have a prior DV before we put them on probation. Or, as the caseloads climb, we're gonna have to cut it to, they have 2 prior domestic violence convictions prior to us putting them on probation. And, just looking at it from that standpoint, you can understand that from a public safety standpoint, that's not a desirable outcome, because we're actually not putting people on probation, meaning they have no supervision other than the court imposes a sentence and says go out and do it. We don't have any regular supervision of their compliance with that sentence if we don't have active probation for our most serious misdemeanors. And when we're not actively supervising them, we increase the risk to the public that they're not complying with the terms of the sentence. So even though the current position did not solve a Blake issue which hasn't arisen for us, whether it arises in the future, I don't know, but it has not yet arisen, just to be upfront about that. But it has really assisted us in dealing with the caseload issue for our probation officers. And I think because we've been able to do that, and we have a really good probation department, I think it's been a great enhancement for public safety for the community. And one thing you had all authorized that was not related to the Blake position was authorize us to have a mental health probation officer, which is separate from mental health court. It's for folks who, for whatever reason, don't meet the requirements of mental health court, but they still have a conviction for a criminal offense and they still have their mental health issues that they're dealing with. And we now have a specific probation officer who is trained in that area and can serve as sort of a mini mental health court. It's not having all the resources that we have at mental health court, but somebody who has some expertise and can really help guide folks in this situation to assist them in making sure they're getting the treatment they need, work with them on some of the other issues that folks with mental illness in the criminal justice system have to deal with. So that's been a really effective program, and we've been able to take some of those tough cases off the caseloads of our probation officers and move it into the mental health probation officer. But we still had those high caseloads. So that's where we're at, and our request now is, even though this, I think, was originally funded with an intention to address Blake issues, those Blake issues never really came up, I think to the surprise of most of us, but it has really helped us in regards to caseload issues. So.
Thank you. Questions?
I'll just say that I asked on that question of why you hadn't seen that shift. I was expecting that too. I'm told that law enforcement, there's like a requirement that they have to make 2 attempts to divert or something like that, and so that they have not wanted to do the administrative piece of tracking that so that they could make that arrest on the 3rd attempt or whatnot. So I don't know that we're gonna see, I don't know. When Blake the law could change around, the drug possession. I think the legislature is looking at that, is gonna look at that this year, but that's what I was hearing, because I was asking those questions. Very interesting to me. Editorial comment, I mean, if drug possession was so dangerous to the community that it was a felony and we invoked that whole Superior Court apparatus around it, but yet now when you have to do a little extra administrative work, it's not even worth charging at all. That, I think, sends a pretty big message about maybe how the legislature should proceed on Blake. But thanks for this background. I certainly understand what your position is on this probation. So this probation counselor has been working for how long? Did you get it filled right away? Or I know a lot of things we funded last year haven't even been filled yet.
It's for 1 year. Once it was approved, we ended up having that position filled within 1 month.
Okay.
So if that person still, we have a person filling that position right now?
The person was currently filling that position until Monday. So they ended up getting the role of the mental health probation counselor.
Okay.
Sunshine ended up leaving that position.
So you'll be looking for a new position, and that current position, the Blake position, ends the end of this year?
Correct. Or end of next year, 2023.
2023, and so I'm just curious, since we needed to keep track of all the Blake-related activities in order for us to get reimbursement by the state. Since this particular position was not doing any Blake-related activities, so how you been funding this position in 2022?
Well, as far as with the funding, we have been absorbing it. So, and that's where within the reimbursement, there's certain parameters that AOC requires in order for us to get those reimbursements, and it's due to the extraordinary cost of judges and so on and so forth. The probation does not fall within those parameters, but it was one of those needs that we identified that was outside of that scope. The scope was more specific to Superior Court and addressing those LFOs and the pre-existing felony charges. And the discussion that we had is, this is gonna fall outside that purview, but it could still be an impact that'll exacerbate the issues that probation's already having. So right now, due to the staff vacancies that we've had, we've been able to absorb it over this last year.
Salary savings.
Yep, and we have those positions filled, so we won't have that vacancy savings for next year.
So I have,
I would just, with all due respect, clarify that the board added appropriation authority, so they haven't been absorbing the cost. You have the appropriation authority in this year. It's in general fund, so what's paying for it? General fund.
Right, that's what,
Right.
my point is, at this point, that we're paying for the
Being paid,
general fund because
covered in the
we're not getting reimbursed by.
Right,
Blake
it
activities.
is revenue we anticipated that we are not receiving.
I have two questions. One's probably gonna be for Robin, and then the next one's for both of you. My first question is, would this qualify for ARPA funds, since it's backlog related is what I'm hearing, trying to process through these cases? Would this qualify for ARPA and for the allotment that we have set aside specifically for that?
If it is directly related to the backlog cases, if that's what this person is managing and working with people who are part of the backlog, then yes, we could use the ARPA money. But if it's just your general
It's general case law.
cases,
That's what you're making a point, right?
then it's not.
Okay.
Because we have talked about the backlog many occasions.
Yeah,
Right.
the backlog we're referring to is the COVID-related backlog. The caseload that the probation officers carry, which is which has been problematic for us, is a separate issue.
So it's case law issue, okay.
My next question is in regards to, this year, I was gonna say absorb it, but it seems like possibly
Just-
that was not right. And I was wondering, right, next year, why you couldn't, like, why come with this request now? Why couldn't you absorb it next year? I'm seeing the reversion rate of 301,000 this year.
Well, I guess part of it is, Frankie and I have talked about this when we go to fill this position. If the people applying for the position don't have an understanding that it's gonna be more than a year, that there's any permanency to it, we're gonna have fewer people to choose from. And, we're not gonna be able to get the quality of person that we think is important to have in that position. We'd like to be able to say, this is a position that's funded within the expectation of the county, and it will be here going forward. You're not just here for a one-year position. So that's significant to us.
And that challenge is not only to district court, that's the challenge that we have across the country.
With the end dates in general.
You have your chart up and.
Here, you wanna use mine?
Sure. Actually, I do. Thank you, Commissioner. I'm trying to go digital here, guys, but as you've already heard today, I'm not that great at it.
Big and tiny print.
While he's looking that up, you guys have done pretty good, Judge, over the last 14 years. You finally got up from what you were. It took you 14 years to get from 2007 or 8 up to 21 or something like that to regain basically what you lost in the recession.
That's right. I mean, you could say we're either really patient or we're not very effective advocates. And maybe it's a combination.
Well, see, Les Eldridge was a commissioner back in the old days there, and I always used to say to Sheriff, well, just have to do more with less. Well, I guess that's what you were good at.
Yeah, we were, we had that, from Tom Ball to Storm Thompson to Leslie Gilliland, all of them just boom, we're out the door.
Yep.
So, yeah, we've gradually tried to build it back up. And in 2008, basically, we just gave up our probation department in response to the county's financial needs. And, since then, we've tried to restore it.
Well, even the increase, into 2004, I think overseeing that activity kept our jail population down. So it, yes, it cost more, but it was a savings in another area. So
Yeah, and.
I think you guys have been on top of it.
So, thank you. Yeah, we're proud.
I'm done. I was waiting for you to find your line.
I did. Thank you.
Yeah, I will say we're proud of our probation department. They work really hard, and I think they do a really nice job. And, I think we're even more hands-on than we used to be. In the prior years when we were fully staffed, times have changed a little bit, but the ability to just actually dig in with these folks and really work with them on, the obstacles that they're facing and being law compliant. I think we've gotten better at dealing with that, so.
Can I ask a question in regards, and I apologize, Judge Buckley, I'm looking at your budget for, since 2007, and I'm seeing almost a 2 million increase, and I'm wondering why that is.
Increase? Oh,
From
you mean, no, a decrease?
Increase, it went from, their budget was 1.9 in 2021, and then it's shown 4.3.
Oh, well, because the
in
probation.
2022.
That's interesting.
Well, I'm wondering if,
Oh.
the probation, just one person wouldn't.
Oh, yeah.
Where's the overall budget?
So is that general fund or is that including treatment
This
sales
is
tax?
only the
General fund.
general fund
Yeah, I don't
know.
only.
You see it?
Yeah, I see the huge
So I was just wondering why,
increase.
I just noticed that right now and I was wondering kind of what,
It's a big jump,
it is a big jump.
120% or something like that. Yeah, I
And
saw
also
it.
on
I saw
the,
it.
on the expenditures jumped the same.
The expenditures jumped the same,
Yeah,
so,
but it went up by $3 million.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So it went from
that seems a little bit.
Well,
Nice.
two.
4 points.
Something's off here.
Frankie, got a
Two.
motorcycle?
Yeah.
But that's from what years? I don't
So-
have any of mine.
Yeah, so
From
from 2021,
21 to
22.
20.
it was 1.9 and then 2022 is 4.3.
Is that a?
You would notice a more than
Yeah.
$2 million jump in your budget, I'm guessing, so.
We have a proposed
I-
2023 of also 4 million,
It's like someone, this is.
4.6 actually, just general fund.
So I'm just wondering,
Yeah, I don't think you.
Maybe we get back to
There's a,
Well, I think it's a Robin
There's-
situation, I think.
this is a quality control.
Paying attention.
The numbers are for the district court budget, starting in 2008 are the same as the coroner. And it should be closer to this $4 million number in every year. We're gonna have to take a look at this.
So I have another sheet here, it stayed the same, the growth in the budget, it was 3,
so the numbers
in
are.
2021, it's 3.9 million, in 2020 it was 3.7 million.
It's real obvious on this sheet.
Yes.
On the paper version?
Yes.
It's actually
The coroner's numbers and these numbers are the same and it changes right here.
Oh,
So probably these numbers are the coroners,
Yeah, I think
because that
the
makes more
coroners.
sense for the coroner.
Yeah, way more sense for the coroner.
What,
Yeah.
So wait
look
a
at
second,
that.
you saying the coroner's taking our money?
Yeah, all of it.
You know what he's got that you're probably dealing with, though? He's got about, from years back, 2007, 2008, we'd have about 10 overdoses in a year. He's got over 110 so far this year. Actually, autopsy issues and all that go with that. He said we're gonna be maybe over
So
150
those numbers
this year.
are,
I see King County's finally
Give you
paying
the real
attention to
numbers
it.
for this
There was an
report.
article in the
Okay.
news
The last
today
2
about
years
opioid,
are
fentanyl
accurate.
overdose.
okay, that's,
Everything
But the
prior to
revision-
this.
I think all
Yeah.
different groups are afraid to report on it.
thank you.
I've asked a couple times, how come there's no articles in our paper?
Sure.
They don't seem to be too
Mr. Mejia
interested.
is on top.
For whatever
of
reason.
this spreadsheet today.
Good job.
We're working with those folks, you
The
know.
eagle eye of a very busy.
This one's too small for me to really see very well.
No, that's
And
exactly how
would
we
you like-
wanted you to use those tools.
And let me address the second issue, the revenue issue, and I want to qualify it by saying I'm a little uncomfortable addressing it because, you know, one of the things that judges always want to make sure that we understand is we don't see courts as revenue generators. That's not, we don't want that to be our mindset. We don't want to have to consider that in imposing fines or not imposing fines. I'm happy to report to the commissioners about, you know, what it looks like from a trend standpoint and why those numbers look that way. But I want to be very clear that the court itself does not see this as an issue for the court to try to increase revenue or decrease revenue or anything like that. We try to make the decisions appropriate to each case. And I just want to be really firm about that.
Can I ask real quick?
Sure.
Is this the issue that we talked about a long time ago about DUI?
It looks like the DUI revenue is going down, and I appreciate those comments, and no one is suggesting that you should impose more fines so that we get more money.
My response to that was awesome.
Yeah.
There's less DUIs occurring. If that were the driver, let's
Right.
just say theoretically, I would be very happy to take less revenue, you know,
Right.
because you're increasing community safety.
So we're just curious why the trend.
Yeah, and it's an excellent question. The trend is for a variety of reasons. One, pandemic. So the pandemic has led to a backlog in cases, as I referred to. And we have a large backlog in DUI cases that have happened over the last 2.5 years since the pandemic started, which are yet to be resolved. They're just hanging there. So there are a number of cases where nothing's happened on the case, so we don't even know what is going to transpire by way of fine. So that's one impact. Another one is there's been a Supreme Court case called Blazina, and Blazina told courts statewide that in doing criminal sentencing, we have to inquire of every defendant what is their financial situation and can they afford various fines and fees that could be assessed by the court. So we have to do what's called a Blazina analysis in every single criminal sentencing, and we do that. And the end result in a court like ours, district court, where approximately 85% of our criminal defendants are indigent and entitled to public defenders, very few of them are going to have the money to pay fines and fees. And now, the fee that I'm more interested in assessing is the probation fee, because all of that money stays local. It does not get split with various state interests. So, when I'm looking at on a DUI case and I'm looking at, somebody who's going to be monitored by probation, I'm much more interested in making sure that what resources they have go to supporting that probation monitoring than I am in imposing a financial punishment on them, part of which is split with the state. Just personally, that's my view when I'm doing it. So my fine, in the DUI statute, it says there's a minimum fine, and this is what it is. And for your information, we very rarely even get close to the minimum fine these days. We're just finding that, financially, the defendant doesn't have the resources to pay even the minimum fine. So if the minimum fine is $700, I might impose $100. I might impose nothing. I might say do community service. I will try to address their issue punitively in other ways than trying to hurt them where they have no hope of ever paying it, and also, really focus on the rehabilitation side of the sentence as opposed to the punitive side. So That would be the answer, I think.
I think being a lawman for all those years, I have to say, and Ty coming from the defense side of things, what's the point of kicking a guy when he's down? He's never, and he's not gonna be able to get up. And what you're doing is making sure that he can't recover. And I agree with you 100% on that.
Well, yeah, thank you, Commissioner Edwards. Yeah, and just, I'll share this, it's not directly on point here, but, the county recently had an LFO day, Superior Court and District Court, where we invite people to come in, talk to us about your traffic fines, and we'll try to come up with some way that you can manage those so you can go get your driver's license. And the running joke we had in District Court was, we do LFO day every single day of the year.
Yeah.
Every case that comes before us, if somebody says, hey, I, by the way, had a traffic ticket 4 years ago and I haven't been able to pay that off and that's suspending my license, I'll look at it, I'll either say, okay, fine, I've, pay it $100 instead of the $550, pay it over, 3 months, or I'll say, okay, fine's gone, go get your license. We do that a lot. And we do it a lot, sometimes without them even asking, because when I have somebody in front of me on a DUI and something else, and I see that the license is suspended and the only thing holding them are tickets from Thurston County, I'll say, hey, let's talk about these tickets that are holding. Let's get you in a position where you can actually go back and get your license, get back to work so you're not depressed and drinking and doing all those other things. So we're really aggressive about that. It's not directly related to this, but I just wanted the three of you to know that's the approach we're taking, so.
We don't always agree.
All right,
Not how I can tell, you guys look very agreeable.
At this point, they're just listening.
Any questions for me about the revenue side of that?
Figure out that $4 million.
Well, I think
I'll
Robin did.
resolve that for you. I'll take.
Although I am gonna call the coroner.
You're taking my money.
All right, so that is all we have for you today. I think it's just now 4 o'clock, so,
Excuse myself.
yes. Thank you,
Okay.
Commissioner.
It is 4 o'clock. Thank you very much. We are adjourned.
Thank you.
That was my pleasure, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.